What if a child, only 14 years old, was taken, tried, and executed, without a shred of evidence? What if, decades later, the truth came out? That he was innocent? This is not fiction. This is the story of George Jr. Stinney Jr., a boy whose death still haunts the conscience of justice itself. Spring, 1944. Alkaloo, South Carolina. A small mill town. Cotton and lumber kept it alive. And yet, like so many towns in the Jim Crow South, it was divided. Black families lived on one side of the railroad tracks. White families on the other. Separate schools. Separate churches. Separate graves. And beneath it all, fear. Fear that any accusation could ignite anger. Fear that justice would never be equal. On March 23, 1944, two white girls, Betty June Binnicker, age 11, and Mary Emma Thames, age 8, rode their bicycles through the black neighborhood. They were searching for wildflowers. They stopped briefly when they saw two children outside, George Stinney Jr., 14, and his little sister Aim, 7. The girls asked about a certain type of flower. George and Aim answered politely. Then the girls rode off, pedaling down the dusty road. That was the last time they were seen alive. By evening, when the girls did not return home, families began to worry. Neighbors joined in the search. The mill whistle blew, calling people out into the darkening streets. The next morning, searchers found the two bodies in a shallow ditch near the edge of town. Both girls had been beaten savagely, their skulls crushed. The town erupted in grief and in fury. Within hours, police needed someone to blame. They came for George Stinney Jr. He was only 14, barely 5'1", 95 pounds. They took him from his home. No warrant, no warning, no parents allowed. He was questioned alone by white officers, grown men towering over a frightened boy. No lawyer was present. No written statement was ever signed. No recording was made. Yet the police claimed George had confessed. They said he admitted killing both girls. But there was no paper, no witness, no proof. Just their word against a child. And in 1944 South Carolina, their word was enough. George was locked away. His parents were told to leave town for their own safety. His siblings scattered. The boy was left alone to face the weight of an entire system. 83 days later, George Stinney Jr. stood trial for his life. The courtroom was crowded. White townspeople filled the benches. Reporters scribbled notes. But George's family, too afraid of the mob outside, was nowhere to be seen. His defense attorney was a tax lawyer with no experience in capital trials. He was paid little. And he did almost nothing. He called no witnesses. He did not cross-examine key testimony. He never brought up George's sister Aim, who could have testified George was with her the entire afternoon. The trial lasted a single day. The prosecution spoke of George's supposed confession, though no document existed. The defense offered nothing in reply. The all-white jury, 12 men, deliberated for 10 minutes. Verdict: guilty. Sentence: death by electric chair. George was just 14. On June 16, 1944, George was led into the execution chamber at the South Carolina State Penitentiary. Witnesses watched as this thin, trembling child walked into the room. The electric chair, built for grown men, loomed above him. He was so small, the straps did not fit. Officials placed a Bible, his own Bible, on the seat to boost his height. They fastened the leather belts across his fragile chest and arms. The oversized mask slipped from his face. And as the switch was thrown, witnesses said tears rolled down his cheeks. 2,000 volts surged through his body. His hands clenched. His small frame convulsed. Again and again, until he was still. George Jr. Stinney Jr. was pronounced dead. The youngest person executed in the United States in the 20th century. The state moved quickly to erase him. His family, fearing violence, fled. His grave was left unmarked. His name, for decades, spoken only in whispers. But not forever. Decades later, the truth began to surface. George's sister, Aim, still remembered that day. She had been with him when the girls rode by. George could not have committed the crime. He had been by her side the entire time. Former cellmates recalled George's fear, his childlike confusion. One remembered him saying softly, "I didn't do it. Why would they kill me for something I didn't do?" Experts studied the case. The so-called confession was exposed as coerced, likely forced under threat and intimidation. Medical evidence revealed inconsistencies. The timeline given by police did not match the facts. Lawyers, activists, and historians pressed for justice. And in 2014, 70 years after George's execution, a South Carolina judge reopened the case. Testimony was heard. Evidence was reviewed. And the verdict was clear: George Stinney had been denied a fair trial. The conviction was overturned. The judge called it a great and fundamental injustice. At last, George's name was cleared. But too late to save him. George Stinney Jr. never grew up. He never left Alcaloo. He never got to tell his side of the story. He was only a child, executed by a system that saw not a boy, but a scapegoat. His story is not just history. It is a mirror. A warning. A warning of what happens when fear outweighs truth. When race decides guilt. When children are denied justice. George Stinney Jr. was only 14. And we must never forget his name.